So welcome to this latest video on 162 Maths, and in this video we're going over the June 2022 Higher Paper 3, which is a calculated paper. And as always, I'll include a question breakdown so you can see which question refers to which topic. So let's get straight into this June 2022 Higher Paper 3, which is a calculated paper. So looking at question 1, it says circle the smallest number. So when you are defining this, what you want to try and do with decimals is try and make sure they've got all the same number of numbers after the decimal point. So here we can see the maximum number of numbers is 3, excluding the recurring decimal. I could just write that as 3, and then we've got a 0 here. So here, looking at ignoring the 4 because each number's got a 4, looking at the number after the decimal point, so I've got 310, 333, 301, and 330. Which of those is the smallest? It's going to be our third option. Then moving on to question 2, which is looking at vector calculations. So here what we want to do is we want to do -4 minus 3, and then we want to do 8 minus -2. Now looking at the top one, that's going to give me -7. Looking at the bottom one, 2 minuses make a plus, so that's going to be 10. So I'm looking for -7, 10, which is our first option. Moving on to question 3, it says here are 4 scatter graphs, and we want to circle which graph is a line of best fit more appropriate. Well, in order for a line of best fit to be more appropriate, there needs to be correlation. So I'm looking for which of these 4 graphs has some form of correlation, whether it be positive or negative, and that is going to be graph D. Then it says which graph has an outlier. So this is one that predominantly stands out from the rest of the graph. So I would say it's going to be graph B. Moving on to question 4, it says use trigonometry to work out the size of angle X. So here we want to label the triangle. So this is theta, which means that this is going to be opposite. That's going to be the hypotenuse, and that's going to be the adjacent. Now I don't need the hypotenuse because that's just blank, so I'm going to be using tan in this case. So I write down the ratio. So it's tan x equals opposite over adjacent, and then I just want to substitute those numbers in. So here I've got tan x equals 10 over 4. And then so x equals the inverse tan of 10 over 4. And if I type that into my calculator, I get an answer of 68.2, and that's to 1 decimal place. Now when it comes to rounding, you can round up to whatever you want. As long as it's correct, it will be fine. If you want to play it safe and just copy all the digits from your calculator, that would be accepted as well. So moving on to question 5, it says Laura works in a shop. The table shows the number of hours she works on 2 weekends. Work out the percentage increase in her total hours from weekend 1 to weekend 2. So don't let the columns distract you. So this is weekend 1 and this is weekend 2. So the total hours that she's worked in both is for weekend 1, she's done 2 plus 3, which is 5. And she's worked a total of 9 hours in weekend 2. So to work out percentage increase, the formula is the difference divided by the original multiplied by 100. So it's going to be, the difference is 4 divided by 5 multiplied by 100, and that gives me a final answer of 80%. Moving on to question 6, it says here is a sketch of a curve, and we've got y equals x squared minus 4x minus 5. And question 6a asks us to write down the 2 roots of this equation. So what we're looking for is where it crosses the y-axis, the x-axis rather. So it's going to be at -1 and at +5. Now you can write those numbers in any order to get the 1 mark. The next question then says work out the coordinate of t of the turning point. So for this, what I need to do is I need to use completing the square. So if I write down the equation first, don't know why I've included that bracket. Let's get rid of it because it can be quite confusing. And let's write that x a little bit better. And so using completing the square, I set up my bracket and I divide this number by 2, and I take away the digit inside the bracket squared, which is going to be 4. And then simplifying all of this, I get x minus 2 squared minus 9, meaning that my minimum point, or the turning point, is going to be at 2 minus 9. So the answer I need to write there is 2 minus 9, and that does need to be in that order because it is a coordinate. Moving on to question 7, it says A is an arithmetic progression. Here is the first 4 terms. G is a geometric progression. Here is the first 4 terms. And the question's telling us that the nth term of A is equal to the nth term of G. Work out the value of n. Well, first things first, let's work out the nth term of this. Well, we can see that the difference is plus 3. So that means 3n is going to be in the formula. And how do I get from 3 to 13? Well, I need to add 10. Then moving on to the 8th term of this geometric progression, well, you can either do that by continuing the sequence. And so here we can see that we're just doubling. So that's going to be 32, that's going to be 64, that's going to be 128, and that's going to be 256. Alternatively, what you could have done is found the nth term of this geometric progression, which is going to be, well, the formula is a times r to the power of n minus 1. A is the first term, which is 2. R is the common ratio, which is also 2, n minus 1. And then if I sub n equals 8 into this particular formula, it would also give me 256. So what I've got is I've got 3n plus 10 equals 256. So then taking away the 10, I end up with 3n equals 246, and then dividing by 3, I get 246 divided by 3, which is 82. Moving on to question 8, it says information about 2 fridge freezers A and B are shown. So for A, the total capacity is 330. The fridge capacity is in the ratio to the freezer capacity is in the ratio of 3 to 2. For B, the fridge capacity is 294 and the ratio of fridge to freezer is 7 to 3. And the question is asking us, Grace buys one of these fridge freezers. She wants to buy one with the greater freezer capacity. Which one should she buy? So let's just return to the diagram and we'll do the working out so you can see the actual information on screen. So for this, what we want to do is here we want to do 330 divided by, so here we know the total. So we're doing 330 divided by the total numbers in the ratio, which is 5. And that works out to be 330 divided by 5, which is 66. So then what we then need to do is multiply these two numbers by 66, in which then 3 times 66 is 198, and 2 times 66 is 132. So she wants to buy one with the biggest freezer. So for fridge A, it's got 132. Then for this one here, well, here we only know the fridge. So the fridge is 7 parts. So 7 parts equals 294, which therefore means that 1 part is going to equal 294 divided by 7, which is 42. And then the freezer is 3 parts, so it's going to be 3 times 42. 3 times 42 is 126. So then which of these has the biggest answer? Well, it's going to be freezer A. So Grace should purchase or buy freezer, or fridge freezer I should say, A. And it's always important that you do state which one she should buy, because that was the question, and we just had to show her working out which is 132 and 126. Moving on to question 9, it says Tom and Ardil are 2 runners in a 200-metre race. Tom completes the race in 24 seconds. Ardil completes the race at an average speed of 28.8 kilometers per hour. Who wins the race? Well, what you want to do here is there's a couple of ways in which you can do this. You can try and work out using distance, speed, time. Let me just write down the triangle for this. Or we could work out the speed of Tom and compare it to Ardil's average speed and see, because obviously whoever is running at a higher average speed is therefore going to finish the race quicker, you would assume. So from this, let's have a look. So in terms of Tom's speed, so for Tom's speed, we've got his total time, his distance, which is 200 meters. And we've got that in 24 seconds. Now what we need to do is, because Ardil's speed is in kilometers per hour, I need to convert each of these into kilometers and hours. So to go from meters to kilometers, I divide by 1000 rather. So that's going to be 0.2. And then seconds into hours, well, I divide by 60 to convert that into minutes. And then I've got to divide it by another 60 to convert it into hours. So in other words, I'm going to be dividing by 3600. So 24 divided by 60 divided by 60 gives me 1 over 50, or 1 over 150. And so his speed is going to be 0.2 divided by 1 over 150. And if I just work that out on the calculator, I get an answer of 30 kilometers per hour. So comparing the speeds, Tom wins because Tom is travelling faster. Greater. Now another alternative you could have done is worked out what Ardell's time would have been. So we know it in kilometers per hour. So again, it's just a case of working out his, so if I just do a different colour on this one. So Ardell's time. So again, it's going to be 200 meters. Well, I need that in kilometers. So that's going to be 0.2 divided by 28.8. And so 0.2 divided by 28.8 is 1 over 4.4, or 1 over 144 hours. So then if I multiply that by 60 to give me minutes, multiply that by 60 again. So this times by 60 equals minutes, times that by 60 equals seconds. And on the clock I get 25 seconds. So again, Tom would win because he completes it in 24 seconds and Ardell completes it in 25 seconds. So any of those types of working out would have been absolutely fine. Moving on to question 10, it says the mass of a baby is 3.6 kilograms to 1 decimal place. What is the error interval of the mass in kilograms? So for this, what you want to do is now the numbers are going to be, well, taking 1 decimal place, it's going to be 3.55 and 3.65. So they're the region that I'm looking for. So it's either going to be the second one or the fourth one. Now with this, it can't equal the last number because obviously if it is 3.65, it would then fall into the next decimal place, so it'll be 3.7. So the correct answer you should tick is going to be the last option. Moving on to question 11, it says the quadrilateral has angles 70, 110, 130 and 150. Circle the type of quadrilateral. Well, this is an acute angle, so if I imagine that I've got an acute angle, so let's just guess at what 70 would look like. It's probably a bit stingy on that one. I've got 110, which looks like that, 130, which looks like that, and another 50, which looks like this. So I'm trying to find out which one of those it could be. And I would say, well, for a kite, you've got to have two opposite angles that are going to be two obtuse and two acute. So it could be the kite, but you've got to think you've got one set of angles that are the same, and which that's not going to be the case. With a parallelogram, again, you've got to have two sets of the same angle, so that's not true. Rhombus, again, two sides are the same, so that's not going to be the case. So the correct answer you should circle is going to be trapezium. Moving on to question 12a, it says B is 6 kilometers due south of A and 6 kilometers due west of C. Work out the bearing of A from C. So with these bearing questions, you always want to try and find out what angle it is you're trying to find. So starting from C, I want to get to A. So the angle I need to find is this angle here, which I'm just going to shade in blue without getting rid of that C. Now with this, I know that this is the triangle ABC is a isosceles triangle, so that's 90, that's 45, that's 45. Now we can't use a protractor because it's not drawn accurately, but if I extend this line here, I can then work out what this angle here is going to be. So that's going to be 180 take away 45, which gives me an answer of 135. which means that this angle here is going to be 135 because it's corresponding. So this angle here is going to be 180. So the bearing is going to be 135 plus 180, which if I type into my calculator gives me a bearing of 315 degrees. Moving on to question 12b, it says here is a scale drawing. A ship is going to sail from D to E, so we're going there. And it says Mia wants to work out the ship that the ship needs to sail at a bearing of 68 degrees. And why is Mia wrong? And the reason for that is because the bearing is a reflex angle. And you could also say that maybe she's potentially worked out the angle from E to D, not D to E. So again, that could have been one error. Moving on to question 13, it says simplify root 5a plus root 5a. Well, that's going to be 2 root 5a, and which is our third option. Moving on to question 14, it says students in 2 classes A and B raise money for charity. The box plot for class A is shown on the grid. For class B, the lowest amount was 3 and the highest amount was 26. So I'm assuming that we need to draw this box plot, so yes we do. So the lowest amount there, so the lowest amount is 3, which is there, and the highest amount was 26, which is there. The lower quartile is £11, which is there. Let me just do these in different colours so you can see which ones I've done and where. Now it should be using a ruler, but again, just to save a bit of time for me, I'm just not doing that. The median was £2 greater than class A. Well, the median was 12 for class A, so that's going to be 12 plus 2, which is 14. So that's going to be there. And the interquartile range was 1.5 times greater than class A. Well, the IQR for A was 17 minus 9, which is 8. So then if I then do, so the IQR for B is going to be 8 times 1.5, and 8 times 1.5 is 12. So then for this, I need to do the lower quartile plus 12, gives me the upper quartile, and the lower quartile was 11, so 11 plus 12 is 23, so that's going to be there. And the next thing for me then to do is then turn this into a box whisker diagram or box plot. So I join the lower quartile and the upper quartile and draw my whiskers, and it should look something like that. Moving on to question 15, it says that a town has a population density of 278 people per square kilometre and a population of 158460. The population increases to 168720. Work out the population density after the increase. So first things first, what we need to do is we need to work out the area. So to work out the area, I need to change this formula. So it's going to be the population divided by the population density. So the area is going to equal 158460 over 278. And if I type that into my calculator, so 158460 divided by 278 gives me an answer of 570 square kilometres. Now the area of the city is not going to change, or a town is not going to change. So then here the population density, or should I say the new population density, using this formula is going to be the population that it is now over the area, which is 570. And so here I've got 168720 divided by 570, which equals 296. The units for that, do I need to write down the units? No, because it's told to be there. And there is my final answer. Moving on to question 16, it says here is a scale drawing. The scale is 1 centimetre represents 500 metres. Virat wants to estimate the volume of the water in the reservoir. He draws on the scale drawing a circle of 3 centimeters, and it says Virat estimates the volume of the reservoir by assuming that the reservoir is a cylinder whose cross-sectional area is a circle and the depth of the reservoir is 70 meters. Work out Virat's estimate in cubic meters. So for this, what we need to do is we need to, well, we know that the radius is 3 centimeters. Now, in terms of the actual distances, that we know that if the radius is 3 centimeters, using the scale, which was mentioned here, that 1 centimeter equals 500 meters. So that's going to be 1500 meters. And the depth, it says, is 17 meters. That's already been converted for me. So then to work out the volume, I need to use the formula of pi r squared times the depth, or d or l, no matter which one we're going for. So it's going to be pi times 1500 squared multiplied by 17. And if I type that all into my calculator, I get a rather big number of 201,65919. Now for question 16b, it says in fact that the depth of the reservoir is 13.8 meters and the reservoir is not a cylinder, see the diagram. Which statement is about the actual volume of the reservoir is correct? Well, looking at it, even though the area is going to be deeper, so for example, we've got our canyon or our reservoir, and what it could be is something that looks like this. Now we've assumed that it's a cylinder where it looks like this. So even though that the depth has increased, that it's actually deeper, however the area might not actually be a cylinder. So you can see that by assuming it's a cylinder, we've added on this extra volume here. So the correct answer you should tick is that it could be less than or greater than Virat's estimate. And the reason for that is because we don't know whether the area in the reservoir is going to be bigger or smaller than the cylinder. So something along those lines would have been absolutely fine. So let me just write down something here. So again, something along the lines that it could be, so depending on, so I would say something along the lines that Virat's estimated cylinder could fit inside the reservoir or might not, despite knowing it's deeper. So something along those lines would be absolutely fine. Question 17 says, in a video game, players make their own character. They can choose from 8 faces, 4 bodies and 5 hairstyles. How many different characters can be made? Well, for this is just a put rule of counting. So we've just got to multiply each of those numbers together. So I've got 8 times 4 times 5, which gives me an answer of 160. Then moving on to question 17b, it says 2 characters are made at random. What is the probability that they are exactly the same? Well, if one person being chosen and made their character, then the probability of the next person being made exactly the same is going to be 1 over 160. Moving on to question 18, it says A, B, C are points on a circle with centre O. DC is a tangent to the circle. Show that the angle ABO and angle ACO is in the ratio of 3 to 1. So let's first of all just highlight where those angles are. So ABO, is this angle here. And ACO is this angle here. So those are the 2 angles that I need to find first. Now with these particular questions, and also we need to know that it's not drawn accurately, so I can't use my protractor. So first things first, let's use our knowledge of circle theorems. Well, I know that this angle here is going to be twice the size. Now the good thing about these questions, you can now show you're working out on the diagram. You don't have to explain it unless the question does specify. So this angle here is going to be double, and the reason for that is because it's an arrowhead. Now the next thing we know is that this triangle OBC is an isosceles triangle because we've got two lengths that are the radius. So this angle here and this angle here are going to be the same. So from this, I can then work out that 180 minus 56 divided by 2. And if I work that out, 150 minus 56 divided by 2 gives me 62. So this angle here is 62 and this angle here is 62. Now I can work out what this angle here is because OC is the radius and CD is a tangent, that this angle here must be 90 degrees. So this angle, green angle, is going to be, let me write it in green, is going to be 90, take away 83, which is 7 degrees. So this green angle is 7, and let me just highlight that. So the next thing for me then to do is to work out what this angle here is going to be. Now with this, what we know is that we've got an alternate segment theorem, which basically states that this whole angle here of 83, don't know why I've just shaded in that a little bit more. So this angle here, 83, equals this entire angle here. So that and this, basically the alternate segment theorem, so this purple angle must be 83, and that's from the alternate segment theorem. So therefore, this yellow angle, if that blue angle is 62, so this angle here is going to be 83, take away 62, and 83 take away 62 is 21, in which I can highlight that one. So then from this then, so we can see that angle ABO is 21, ACO is 7, and 21 to the ratio of 7 can be simplified in the ratio of 3 to 1, and there is our final answer. Moving on to question 19, it says here is a plan of the floor of an L-shaped room. All lengths are in meters, and it says show the area of the floor is 75 square meters. Show that we've got this expression. So for this, what we want to do is want to split this shape up into two sections. So we know that this area here is going to be 3 lots of x minus 5, and we know that this area here is going to be x minus 2 times x. So then looking at the total area, which is 75, when we add those two lengths up, or the two areas up I should say, I end up with this equals 75. So if I expand the brackets, I get something that is slowly now resembling a quadratic equation. So take the 70, let's simplify all this first. So I get x squared plus x minus 15 equals 75. Take the 75 over and I end up with x squared plus x minus 90 equals 0. Then for B, it says by factorising, work out the value of x. So I'm looking for two numbers that multiply together to give me minus 90, added together give me x. So here my two numbers are going to be 10 and 9. And it's going to be plus 10 and minus 9. Make sure you're always writing equals 0. So the two solutions are going to be minus 10 or positive 9. Now it can't equal minus 10 because we can't have a negative length. So the correct answer should be 9 meters. Moving on to question 20, it says 2,448 is invested into an account at a rate of compound interest. It says 1 year, the investment was, after 1 year, the investment was 2496.96 in the account. How much is in the account after 4 years? So for this, what we need to do is we want to work out the percentage rate first. So how do we do that? Well, we basically work out the difference between the two amounts. So if I just write down the formula, so it's the difference divided by the original multiplied by 100. So here the difference between these two amounts is going to be 2496.96 take away 2448, which is £48.96, divided by the original, which is 2448, multiply that by 100. So I just work that out now, I get an interest rate of 2%. So from this, using compound interest, we've got the original amount, which is 2448, multiplied by the decimal multiplier with a 2% increase over the number of times, so after 4 years. And we type that into our calculator, so 2448 multiplied by 1.02 to the power of 4, and I get an answer of 264.9.79. You always want to make sure you round into 2 decimal places whenever you're dealing with money. Moving on to question 21, it says use the sine rule to work out the size of angle x. So this should be relatively quite straightforward. So this is my A, that's my little a, this is my B, that's little b. So what we've got is we've got 17 over sine x equals 23 over sine 64. So then cross multiplying, we get 17 sine, let me do it the other way actually. So let's do 23 sine x equals 17 sine 64, which therefore becomes sine x equals 17 sine 64 divided by 23. So x equals the inverse sine of 17 sine 64 over 23. And if I type that all into my calculator, I get an answer of 41.6 degrees, and that's to 1 decimal place. Moving on to question 22, it says f of x equals 3x, g of x equals x2. Circle the expression as fg of x. So what I want to do is I want to substitute this where I see an x. So that's going to be 3 lots of not x, but the function of g, which is 3x squared. So that's going to be 3x squared, and so that is the first option. Moving on to question 23, it says here are 2 simultaneous equations. It says there is a solution when x equals 5, work out the value of c plus d. Well, if there's a solution at x equals 5, that means that that's what x equals in both these 2 equations. So for this, when x equals 5, then what I end up with is y equals 25 plus 35 minus c. So I end up with y equals 60 minus c. So let me just write that as like so. And for this one here, I end up with y, when x equals 5, I've got y equals 15 plus d. And so here are my 2 equations. Now, typically with simultaneous equations, you tend to have the letters all on one side, numbers on the other. If you want to, you could do that. It's not essential for this, but if you wanted to, you could convert it. So here I've got y plus c equals 60. And for this one, I've got y minus, I don't know what I've wrote, well, I've got a d there, equals y plus minus d equals 15. Now for this, what you want to do is make y the subject. So because obviously we want an equation where it's just got c and d. So for this one here, well, actually we've already got y the subject. So if I substitute y equals 15 plus d into this equation, then what I end up with is basically I'm going to swap this with that. Then what I end up with is 15 plus d plus c equals 60. I then take the 15 over to the other side, so I end up with c plus d, and I've just obviously flipped the 2 letters around, and that equals 45. So the answer then is 45. Moving on to question 24, it says here is a sketch of the graphs of y equals kx, k to the power of x, and y equals x squared plus c. K and C are both positive constants, and we need to work out the value of R. So first of all, let's work with this equation here and substitute this in to try and find out what K is going to be. So for this, we know that when x equals 4, y equals 81, so I've got 81 equals K to the power of 4. So then if I take the fourth root of both of those numbers, then what I end up with is that 3 equals K. So then this formula here is going to be y equals 3 to the x. So then from this, I can then work out what P is. So let me just label this so you can see what order that I'm doing this in. So then using this, so when x equals 2, I've got y equals 3 squared, and so P equals 9. So I can scrap that out and write 2, 9. Now from this, I can then use this coordinate to then work out what R is going to be. So then from this, I've then got, let me just write down that's number 4. So number 5, when x equals 2, y equals 9. So I've got 9 equals 2 squared plus c. So 9 equals 4 plus c, so c equals 5. So then this equation here is going to be y equals x squared plus 5. And then from this, I can then use this coordinate here. So y equals 43.44 equals x squared plus 5. Well, if I take away 5, so I've got 43.44, take away 5, which is 38.44 equals x squared. Square root 38.44, and that equals x. I'm not dealing with positive and minus because here my R value is going to be a positive number. So the square root of 388.44 gives me an answer of 6.2. So R equals 6.2. Moving on to question 25, it says that a company makes tubes of toothpaste. The masses of 80 tubes are checked and a histogram shows the results. A company makes 28,000 tubes each day. Estimate how many tubes each day has a mass of less than 122. So for this, what we need to do is we need to find 122, which is there. And what we want to do is work out the area of each of these. So this area here is, well, the area is equal to, or the frequency is going to be equal to the frequency density multiplied by the class width. So this area here has got frequency density of 4, so that's going to be 4 times 2, and this area here is going to be 10 times, and that's 0.6. So the total area, so the out of, and I think it was 80 tubes, so out of 80, the number less than 122 is going to be 6 plus 8, which is 14. That's out of 80. So what I then want to do is work out the proportion. So it's 14 out of 80, and then I multiply that by the total population. So that's going to be 28,000. So then if I then type that all into my calculator, and again I could have simplified 14 over 80, but I don't need to. And I get an answer of 4,900. So then moving on to question 26, it says Q and R are two numbers. As a product of their primes, we've got Q equals 2 cubed times 3 times a cubed, and R equals 2 to the power 4 times 3 squared times a squared. It says that the highest common factor of Q and R is 4056, and it says to work out the value of A. Well, for this, if I start by drawing my Venn diagram, and I've got Q and I've got R. So if I then first of all just start by writing these out without using powers, and for this one, I've got 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 3 times 3 times A times A. I look at what they've both got. So they've both got a 2, another 2, and another 2. They've also got a 3, and they've also got 2 A's. Oh, I don't know why I've done that one there. And 2 A's. So from this, what we can then see is the ones I've circled, well, I've got 3 2's, I've got a 3, and I've got 2 A's. So that means that 2 times 2 times 2 times 3 times A is equal to 4056. So then simplifying all of this, I get 24A squared equals 4056. So A squared equals 169, so A equals 13. Now the reason why it's not positive or negative 13, because we don't have negative numbers, so it's going to be positive 13. Moving on to question 26, it says work out the lowest common multiple of Q and R. Well, if I go back to this screen here so we can see it all in. Now what I can do is, now that I know the value of A is 13, just get that back up, I can swap A with 13. So I've got 2 13s there. Then what's exclusive to Q is another 13, because A is obviously 13. And what's exclusive to R is another 2 and another 3. So that means that the lowest common multiple is going to be 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 3 times 3 times 13 times 13 times 13. Again, you can use powers to get you there a little bit quicker, so you're not typing in as much. So you type in 2 to the power 4 times 3 squared times 13 squared and we get an answer of or 13 cubed it should be rather, and we get an answer of 316368, and there is our answer for this one. Question 27, it says expand fully. So for this, what I want to do is I'll expand these two brackets first. It doesn't matter which one you do, but this is just usually how I do it. Oh, excuse me there. And so what I end up with is x squared, and it's going to be plus 4x minus 32. Then I multiply x out, so I get x cubed plus 4x squared plus or minus 32x, and then I go for minus 3x squared minus 12x, and then it's going to be plus 96, and then all I then need to do is just simply add them together. So I get x cubed plus x squared minus 44x plus 96, and there is my final answer for that one. And there we are done.